You think a stolen loaf of bread only costs a few dollars. For 22-year-old Maya, it cost her freedom. When she took a single sourdough loaf to keep her little sister alive, she didn't know she was stealing from Brooklyn's most ruthless syndicate boss. His payback wasn't blood, it was her soul. The winter of 2019 in Brooklyn was merciless, the kind of cold that seeped through the soles of cheap shoes and settled deep into your bones. For 22-year-old Maya Collins, the cold was a secondary concern to the gnawing hunger in her stomach and the terrifying rattling cough coming from her 8-year-old sister Chloe. Since their mother walked out 3 years prior, Maya had been playing a rigged game against poverty. She worked double shifts at a diner in Bay Ridge, but when Chloe's severe autoimmune disorder flared up, the medical bills swallowed Maya's meager paychecks whole. By mid-November, they had been evicted from their cramped studio and were squatting in an abandoned, unheated basement apartment off DeGraw Street in Cobble Hill. They had not eaten in 2 days. Desperation does not announce itself. It quietly dismantles your morals until survival is the only logic left. That was how Maya found herself, standing in the freezing rain at 11 p.m. outside Borghese Artisan Bakery on Court Street. To the gentrified neighborhood, the bakery was a charming, old-school Italian joint that sold $12 olive battards. To those who actually knew the streets, Borghese was the pristine, untouchable front for the Russo crime family. It was their sanctuary, their money-laundering hub and the undisputed territory of Vincent Russo. Vincent wasn't a street-level thug. He was 32, ruthlessly educated, and had inherited the syndicate after his father, Lorenzo, was gunned down in 2015. Vincent was known as the architect of the modern Brooklyn underworld, a man who didn't need to raise his voice to make grown men bleed. Maya didn't know any of this. All she knew was that she had watched the bakers pull tray after tray of hot golden bread from the brick ovens just before closing. She also knew that the delivery door in the back alley had a broken latch. She had noticed it 2 days ago when digging through the dumpster. Shivering, her wet hair plastered to her cheeks, Maya slipped into the alley. She pressed her frozen hands against the heavy steel door. It clicked. She pushed it open, slipping into the overwhelming, intoxicating warmth of the bakery kitchen. The smell of yeast-roasted garlic and flour hit her like a physical blow, making her empty stomach cramp violently. The front of the shop was pitch black, but a single warm pendant light hung over the massive butcher block prep table in the center of the kitchen. And resting perfectly in the center of that table was a massive, braided, rustic loaf, still radiating heat. Maya didn't hesitate. She lunged for it. She grabbed the bread, hugging its warmth to her freezing chest. She turned to run. "I wouldn't," a voice murmured from the shadows. Maya froze. The voice was deep, smooth, and lacked any inflection of surprise. It was the voice of a predator watching a mouse spring its own trap. From the darkened corner near the industrial walk-in freezer, a man stepped into the perimeter of the light. Vincent Russo was entirely too large for the immaculately tailored charcoal suit he wore. He had jet black hair, sharp, aristocratic features, and a jagged, pale scar that ran from his left cheekbone down to his jawline, a souvenir from a Sicilian cartel war. His dark eyes locked onto Maya, analyzing her soaking wet thrift store coat, her trembling hands, and the bread clutched to her chest. Behind him, 2 massive men stepped out of the dark. One of them, a bruiser named Carmine, reached for the heavy lump in his jacket. Vincent raised a single gloved hand. Carmine stopped instantly. "Do you know what you're holding?" Vincent asked, walking slowly toward her. His polished Oxford shoes made no sound on the flour-dusted tiles. I'm sorry." Maya choked out, her voice cracking. "I'll put it back. Please, That loaf, Vincent interrupted softly, stopping just 3 feet away, is a specialty recipe. Truffle oil, imported Sicilian flour, aged provolone. It is baked exclusively for me every Tuesday night. My father's recipe. You broke into my establishment, bypassed a state-of-the-art security system that I intentionally left disarmed tonight for a private meeting to steal my dinner. Please, Maya whispered, tears mixing with the rain on her face. My little sister. She's sick. We haven't eaten. I just wanted something to keep her going. I'll do anything. Please don't call the police. Vincent stared down at her. For a long, suffocating moment, the only sound was the hum of the commercial refrigerators. He tilted his head, his dark eyes stripping away her defenses, seeing right down to the absolute terror in her soul. The police, Vincent repeated, a dark, humorless smile touching the corner of his mouth. Little thief, the police work for me. If I called them, you wouldn't go to jail. You'd simply disappear into the East River. Maya let out a muffled sob, stepping back until her spine hit the stainless steel prep sink. Vincent reached out. Maya flinched, squeezing her eyes shut, expecting a blow. Instead, she felt his large, warm fingers gently pry the loaf of bread from her rigid grip. He held the bread in one hand, then reached into his jacket with the other, pulling out a thick platinum money clip entirely stuffed with $100 bills. He peeled off $500 and tucked the bills into the pocket of her wet coat. Then he handed the bread back to her. Take it, Vincent commanded softly. Feed your sister. Buy her a warm coat. Maya opened her eyes, staring at him in absolute shock. You're letting me go. I am a businessman, Maya, he said, and her blood ran cold. She hadn't told him her name. A desperate woman is a tragedy. A desperate woman who owes me a favor is an asset. Go home to Cobble Hill. Take care of Chloe. He knew everything. Who are you? She breathed. I am your new landlord, Vincent replied smoothly. And I will be collecting my rent very soon. For 3 days, Maya lived in a state of sheer paranoia. Every shadow in the basement apartment felt like a threat. Every footstep on the sidewalk above made her heart hammer against her ribs. But the bread had fed them. The $500 bought Chloe her vital asthma medication and enough groceries to last 2 weeks. Maya tried to convince herself it was a bizarre act of charity from a dangerous man. She was wrong. Vincent Russo did not believe in charity. He believed in investments. On the 4th morning, Maya woke up to the sound of heavy boots on the concrete floor of the basement. She bolted upright on the thin mattress she shared with Chloe. Standing in the center of the squalid, freezing room were 3 men in tailored suits. At the forefront was Vincent. In the harsh daylight filtering through the grated window, he looked even more intimidating. He wasn't looking at Maya. He was staring at the damp walls, the exposed pipes, and finally at the small, frail form of Chloe, who was sleeping through her wheezing breaths. "What are you doing here?" Maya demanded, pulling the thin blanket up to her chin. "Get out!" Vincent didn't blink. He turned to his lieutenant. "Carmine, pack their things." "What no?" Maya scrambled out of bed, standing barefoot on the freezing concrete. "You can't do this. You stole from me," Vincent said, his voice a low, commanding rumble. "Did you really think the transaction was complete? I told you I would collect." "I'll pay you back," Maya yelled, stepping between Vincent and her sleeping sister. "I'll work 3 jobs. I'll pay back the $500, the bread, whatever it takes." "You owe me far more than money, little thief," Vincent said, taking a step forward until he towered over her. "You breached my sanctuary. Under the laws of my world, your life belongs to me. And right now, your life is a mess. I despise messes." Before Maya could scream or fight Carmine, gently but firmly, lifted the sleeping Chloe, wrapping her securely in a thick cashmere blanket he had brought with him. "Put her down!" Maya shrieked, swinging her fists at Vincent's chest. Vincent caught both of her wrists in one of his massive hands, effortlessly subduing her. He pulled her flush against his chest. She could smell his cologne cedar smoke and expensive leather. "Listen to me carefully." Vincent hissed his lips inches from her ear. "Your sister is currently suffering from a severe upper respiratory infection exacerbated by black mold. This basement is killing her. I am taking her to NYU Langone Hospital, to a private suite where the best pediatric pulmonologist in the state is waiting for her. You are going to get into my car, and you are going to let me save her life. If you fight me, I will leave you here, and she will be dead by Christmas." Maya froze. The fight drained out of her, replaced by a cold, crushing wave of reality. She looked at Chloe's pale, sunken face, resting against Carmine's shoulder. "Why?" Maya whispered, tears spilling over her cheeks. "Why are you doing this?" "Because," Vincent murmured, releasing her wrists and smoothing the lapel of his jacket, "you are going to belong to me now. Completely." Within an hour, Maya's entire reality was dismantled and rebuilt by the Russo Syndicate. Chloe was admitted to a sprawling, sunlit VIP suite at NYU Langone. Nurses buzzed around her, hooking up IVs and administering high-grade treatments Maya could never have dreamed of affording. When Maya tried to ask about the billing, the hospital administrator practically bowed to her, terrified, stating that Mr. Russo had covered everything indefinitely. That evening, Vincent's men drove Maya not back to Brooklyn, but to a heavily fortified, sprawling penthouse in Tribeca. The elevator opened directly into a fortress of glass, steel, and modern art, offering a 360-degree view of the Manhattan skyline. Vincent was sitting at a massive mahogany dining table, pouring a glass of amber whiskey. He gestured for her to sit across from him. Maya sat her hands trembling in her lap. She had been given a chance to shower, and someone had laid out a stunning, tailored silk dress for her that fit perfectly. She felt like a doll, a captive. "Your sister is resting comfortably," Vincent said, sliding a sleek tablet across the table. It showed a live feed of Chloe sleeping peacefully in her hospital bed. She will remain under elite care until she is fully recovered. After that, she will be enrolled in the Dalton School. You can't just buy my life," Maya said, her voice shaking. "I already have," Vincent corrected smoothly. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, his dark eyes locking onto hers with terrifying intensity. "Here is the reality of your situation, Maya. My family is currently engaged in a silent war with the Lucchese faction. To broker a peace, the Commission expects me to marry the Lucchese boss's daughter, a union that would ultimately end with a knife in my back. I need a reason to refuse the marriage without insulting them. I need a fiancé, an outsider, someone who is utterly dependent on me, who will not betray me, and who will play the part of a woman so deeply loved by the boss that the Commission cannot force the political match." Maya's jaw dropped. "You want me to fake an engagement with a Mafia boss? I want you to be my property," Vincent said coldly. "You will live in this penthouse. You will wear my ring. You will attend every gala, every sit-down, every family dinner at my side. You will smile, you will be charming, and you will look at me as if I am the center of your universe. In exchange, your sister wants for nothing, and you both live like queens." "And if I refuse?" Maya whispered. Vincent's eyes darkened, turning entirely obsidian. The mask of the polished businessman slipped, revealing the ruthless apex predator beneath. If you refuse, I withdraw my funding from the hospital. I return you to the rotting basement. And I make sure that no employer in the state of New York ever hires you again. I will not lay a finger on you, Maya. I will simply let the world do what it was already doing to you. It was a demonic retaliation. He wasn't punishing her by inflicting pain. He was punishing her by drowning her in a salvation she could never escape. He was weaponizing her love for her sister to shackle her to a monster. Maya looked at the tablet. She watched Chloe take a deep, clear, unlabored breath for the first time in months. Maya closed her eyes. The bread she had stolen was sitting heavy in her soul. She had made a deal with the devil in the dark, and now he was calling in the debt. "Okay," Maya said softly, opening her eyes to meet the gaze of the syndicate boss. "I'll do it. I'll be your fiancé." Vincent's lips curved into a slow, chilling smile. He reached into his pocket and placed a velvet box on the table, flipping it open to reveal a staggering, flawless, 5-carat blood-red ruby surrounded by diamonds. "Good," Vincent murmured. "Put it on Mia Cara. Your new life begins tonight. And understand this. In my world, there is no such thing as a fake vow. You wear my ring, you bear my name, and you belong to me, until I decide otherwise." By December, the freezing desperation of the Cobble Hill basement felt like a hallucination. Maya's new reality was a masterclass in psychological whiplash. She was a prisoner, yet she held a platinum black card. She was a captive, yet she was draped in custom Oscar de la Renta and flanked by a towering security detail led by Carmine. Chloe was thriving. The world-class specialists at NYU Langone had stabilized her lungs, and Vincent had kept his terrifying promise. Chloe was now attending the prestigious Dalton School, driven every morning in an armored Mercedes SUV. But Maya's debt was being extracted in the spotlight. Vincent was a phantom in the Tribeca penthouse, a man composed of cold silences and calculating stares. He never laid a hand on her, never crossed the threshold of her private suite, but his presence was an oppressive, intoxicating gravity. He missed nothing. When she casually mentioned missing the taste of cheap diner coffee, an industrial espresso machine vanished, replaced by the exact brand of roasted beans she used to serve in Bay Ridge. It was terrifying how closely he watched her. Their public life, however, was a meticulously choreographed performance. The true test arrived on Christmas Eve at the annual Winter Syndicate Gala, held in the cavernous, opulent halls of Cipriani Wall Street. The guest list was a who's who of the New York underworld legitimate politicians and the dreaded commission. "Tonight you do not flinch," Vincent murmured as their limousine pulled up to the venue. He reached over his large, warm hands, adjusting the clasp of a suffocatingly heavy diamond necklace at her throat. "Alberto Lucchese and his son Matteo will be watching your every breath. If they suspect you are a prop, the peace treaty collapses, and the streets will run with blood. Do you understand, Maya?" I smile. I nod. "I belong to you," Maya recited numbly, meeting his obsidian gaze. Vincent's jaw ticked. For a fraction of a second, the cold Mafia boss fractured, revealing a dark, possessive heat. "You do not just belong to me, Mia Cara. Tonight you are the Queen of Brooklyn. Act like it." The gala was a glittering viper's nest. Underneath the vaulted ceilings and towering centerpieces of white winter roses, dangerous men drank vintage champagne and plotted murders. Maya clung to Vincent's arm, playing her part flawlessly. She laughed at the right moments, leaned into his side, and allowed him to press soft, territorial kisses to her temple. But the illusion was shattered when Vincent was temporarily pulled aside by a frantic lieutenant. Maya retreated to a quiet marble alcove near the restrooms to catch her breath. She wasn't alone for long. A breathtaking stone for a little street rat, a slick, venomous voice echoed. Maya turned to see Matteo Lucchese blocking her exit. He was sharply dressed, but his eyes were entirely devoid of sanity. He stepped into her personal space, smelling of gin and cheap malice. "You think we don't know?" Matteo sneered, his eyes dropping to the 5-carat ruby on her finger. "Vincent Russo doesn't marry waitresses from Bay Ridge. My father might be fooled by this little Romeo and Juliet act. But I know a human shield when I see one. How much is he paying you, sweetheart? Or did he just threaten to drop that sickly little sister of yours in the Hudson?" Maya's blood ran ice cold. He knew about Chloe. "Step aside, Matteo," Maya said, fighting to keep her voice steady, channeling every ounce of Vincent's icy demeanor. Matteo laughed, reaching out to grab her wrist. "You're coming with me. Once the commission sees you crying about how Russo forced you into this, his syndicate is finished. And you, maybe I'll keep you for myself." His fingers bruised her skin. Maya opened her mouth to scream, but the air was suddenly violently displaced. A large hand clamped onto the back of Matteo's neck. In a blur of tailored charcoal wool and terrifying speed, Vincent slammed Matteo face first into the marble wall. The sickening crack of bone echoed in the quiet alcove. Matteo crumpled to the floor, clutching his shattered, bleeding nose, groaning in agony. Vincent didn't even look at the bleeding man. He stepped over him, his chest heaving, his eyes locked entirely on Maya. He reached out his thumbs, gently brushing over the red marks forming on her wrist. "Did he touch you anywhere else?" Vincent's voice was a lethal quiet whisper that promised absolute slaughter. "No." Maya breathed, her heart hammering frantically. "Russo, you're a dead man," Matteo spat from the floor, coughing up blood. "My father will declare war." Vincent finally turned his head, looking down at Matteo, with a gaze so devoid of humanity, it made Maya shiver. "Tell Alberto that if his rabid dog ever steps within 50 feet of my fiancée, again I will not stop at breaking his nose. I will mail him to you in boxes. This woman is my life. Do not test my devotion to her." Vincent wrapped a protective arm around Maya's waist, pulling her flush against his chest. And then right there in the shadows of the alcove, he tilted her chin up and kissed her. It wasn't for show. It was a punishing, desperate, consuming kiss that tasted of fine bourbon and raw, unchecked possession. Maya gasped, her hands instinctively clutching the lapels of his suit. The kiss dismantled every lie they had told themselves. It wasn't fake anymore. The demon had found his soul, and it was entirely wrapped up in her. The assault in the alcove was the spark that ignited a powder keg. Alberto Lucchese, insulted by the attack on his son, quietly permitted Matteo to handle his Russo problem. 2 weeks after the gala, the Retaliation hit. Maya was returning from dropping Chloe off at the Dalton school. Carmine was driving the armored SUV through the narrow, snow-packed streets of the Upper East Side when an unmarked garbage truck suddenly reversed out of an alley, T-boning the Mercedes with catastrophic force. The world spun in a horrifying crunch of shattering glass and tearing metal. Maya's head slammed against the window. Through her blurred, ringing vision, she saw masked men swarming the vehicle. Carmine, bleeding profusely from a head wound, managed to draw his weapon and fire twice before he was ripped from the driver's seat and beaten unconscious. Rough hands grabbed Maya, dragging her from the wreckage. A hood was shoved over her head, plunging her into darkness. When the hood was finally ripped away, the smell of brine, rust, and freezing sea air filled her lungs. She was tied to a metal chair in the center of an abandoned maritime warehouse in Red Hook. Standing before her, holding a heavy steel wrench and sporting a heavily bandaged nose, was Matteo Lucchese. Vincent took my dignity. Matteo sneered, pacing around her chair. So I'm taking his prized possession. I've already sent him the coordinates. But I didn't tell him I'd be returning you in pieces. Maya didn't cry. She thought of Chloe safe at school, oblivious to the monsters of the world. She thought of Vincent, the ruthless phantom, who had unwittingly become her only sanctuary. "He's going to kill you," Maya said, her voice eerily calm. "You have no idea what you've awakened." Matteo raised the wrench, his eyes wide with psychotic fury. "Let him try." Before the wrench could descend, the heavy steel doors of the warehouse exploded inward. It wasn't a shootout. It was an execution. Vincent Russo did not send soldiers to retrieve his heart. He came himself. He moved through the dimly lit warehouse like an apex predator, a silenced tactical pistol in his hand. Matteo's men dropped to the concrete before they even registered they were under fire. Matteo panicked, grabbing Maya by the hair and pressing a gun to her temple. "Drop it, Russo. Drop it or I scatter her brains." Vincent stepped into the light. He had stripped off his suit jacket, his white dress shirt stained with the blood of Matteo's guards. His face was a mask of pure demonic rage. "Matteo," Vincent said, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "Look at my eyes." Matteo hesitated, his hand shaking. "Do I look like a man who negotiates?" Vincent didn't drop his weapon. In one fluid, impossible motion, he raised his gun and fired a single shot. The bullet grazed the absolute millimeter of Maya's ear, sinking directly into the dead center of Matteo's forehead. Matteo collapsed backward, dead, before he hit the floor. Vincent dropped his weapon. He crossed the room in 3 massive strides, dropping to his knees before Maya. His hands, usually so steady and cold, were violently trembling as he ripped the ropes from her wrists and ankles. "Maya," he choked out, pulling her into his chest, burying his face in her neck. "Maya, Dio mio, Maya." "I'm okay," she sobbed finally, letting the terror break over her, wrapping her arms tightly around his broad shoulders. "I'm okay. You came. I will always come," he whispered fiercely, pressing his lips to her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "I would burn this entire city to the bedrock before I let anyone take you from me." Hours later, back in the impenetrable safety of the Tribeca penthouse, Maya sat on the edge of the master bed. Vincent was gently applying a butterfly bandage to a small cut on her temple. The adrenaline had faded, leaving a heavy, vulnerable silence between them. "The engagement," Maya said softly, looking up at his sharp, scarred face. "It served its purpose. The Lucchese family will be in disarray. The commission won't force a marriage now. My debt is paid, Vincent. You can let me go." Vincent stopped. He set the medical supplies aside and sat beside her on the edge of the bed. He looked down at his hands, then finally met her gaze. The walls were completely gone. "There was no debt, Maya," Vincent confessed, his voice thick with emotion. Maya frowned, confused. "What do you mean I stole from you? The bread was a trap," Vincent interrupted softly. Maya froze. "Well, what?" Vincent reached out gently, taking her hand and tracing the ruby on her finger. "I saw you 3 months ago, at the diner in Bay Ridge. I was having a meeting in the back booth. You looked so tired, so fiercely protective, when you argued on the phone with the hospital billing department about your sister. I couldn't get you out of my head. I had my men look into you." Maya's breath hitched as the pieces fell into place. "I knew about the eviction. I knew you were squatting in Cobble Hill." Vincent continued, his eyes filled with dark, desperate truth. I knew you were hungry. I purposely ordered the security system at the bakery disarmed. I made sure the back alley latch was broken. I left the bread on the table knowing you had been checking the dumpsters. You orchestrated the whole thing, Maya whispered, shock rippling through her. If I had just offered you money, you would have refused. You are too proud. If I had approached you on the street, you would have run. You despise men like me, Vincent said, leaning his forehead against hers. I needed you to owe me. I needed an excuse to pull you into my world, to protect you, to save Chloe. Without you realizing that I was already completely, helplessly obsessed with you. Maya stared at him. The ruthless Mafia boss, the demon of Brooklyn, had orchestrated an entire syndicate-level plot, risking gang wars and his own life, just to feed her and bring her into his home. It was manipulative. It was insane. It was the most profound, twisted act of love she had ever known. She looked down at the ruby ring, then back up into the eyes of the monster who had become her savior. She didn't pull away. Instead, she reached up her fingers, tangling in his dark hair, and pulled his lips down to hers. Then I guess, Maya murmured against his mouth, I owe you for the rest of my life. Vincent groaned, wrapping his arms around her, finally claiming the thief who had stolen entirely more than just a loaf of bread. She had stolen his cold Mafia soul, and he was never asking for it back. Did Vincent's dark obsession leave you breathless? If you loved this intense Mafia romance, full of deadly twists, high-stakes drama, and undeniable passion, hit that like button and share it with your fellow storytelling addicts. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on our thrilling, real-life inspired stories. Drop a comment below. Would you have taken the bread, knowing the consequences? See you in the next video.